Even before the bill text had come out, Greta, they were running ads and put billboards up around the country suggesting we were cutting Medicaid. It's simply not true.
Republicans are out there saying, we're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting Medicaid. But when you ask the Energy and Commerce Committee to cut $880 billion, there's no way to do that without going through the Medicaid problem. And that is why David Valadao in California, just today, Bernie Moreno, the senator from Ohio, you have Josh Hawley, Susan Collins, are all saying that they can't support this bill the way that it's constructed because you have Medicaid cuts.
Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri is concerned about the direction of his party, asking them if they want to be the party of corporate billionaires or the party of working class Americans. He fears the former, but at this point, those fears should be fully realized. We've seen time and time again what the Republican Party actually stands for, who they're constantly backing. And to be fair, the Democrats aren't a whole lot better in this particular respect, but either way, Americans aren't happy about any of it. We're tired of being overlooked and undervalued, despite the fact that we're the ones keeping this country running. And we're tired of a handful of corporate executives not only getting special privileges from our government, but buying priority from our government. It is utterly undemocratic, almost by definition. And of all people, Josh Hawley is tired of it. He's warning that the Republican Party is currently dealing with an identity crisis. But again, he seems to have caught on a little late. This party fell entirely behind a billionaire businessman and television star whose most notable contribution to our nation was a massive tax cut for the wealthy. Despite the populist messaging, Trump has never been a true populist. And when his working class supporters haven't quite figured that out yet, one would have hoped that Republican congresspeople would not have also been duped by the messaging.
Cade, do you agree with the speaker? Is this bill not a cut to Medicaid?
Well, the right thing to do is not to cut Medicaid, so I'm glad to hear him say that. Manu, it ought to be just a basic foundational principle. It is wrong to cut health care for the working poor, and that's what we're talking about here with Medicaid. My state is a Medicaid expansion state. Over 20% of Missourians, including hundreds of thousands of children, are on Medicaid. And Manu, they're not on Medicaid because they want to be. They're on Medicaid because they cannot afford health insurance in the private market. These are working people and their children who need health care. And it's just wrong to go and cut their health care when they're trying to make ends meet, trying to help their kids, trying to make sure that they're able to provide for their families. So I hope that the House GOP and the Senate GOP will get the message here. By the way, President Trump has said the same thing. No Medicaid benefit cuts.
I have nothing but the utmost respect for Senator Josh Hawley. We just dropped his bill in the House today, the Pelosi Act, which bans members of Congress from trading individual stocks. We're aligned on that. We're not aligned on the terminology, let's put it that way, for Medicaid. He calls them cuts. I call them savings. Look,
Hawley has taken stances against the Republicans and Trump in the past, and he has made efforts to reach across the aisle, working with Democratic congresspeople from time to time. However, one of the most iconic moments for him was when he fist pumped the insurrectionists on January 6th and then fundraised off of the image of it. He also voted against certifying the 2020 election results for Joe Biden. But what has triggered his current ascension is the Trump administration's plans to cut Medicaid, and of course, it all comes back to those 2017 tax cuts. In an opinion piece Hawley wrote for the New York Times, Hawley said it would be politically suicidal for Republicans to cut Medicaid in order to pay for Trump's extended tax cuts for the wealthy. As of this week, the Congressional Committee proposed a plan that would essentially eliminate health insurance for roughly 9 million low-income Americans by cutting down Medicaid, all in an effort to cut $880 billion in federal spending to pay for the tax cuts. Furthermore, under the new proposal, millions of low-income Americans who are technically above the federal poverty line would no longer be exempt from co-payments when receiving medical care. Along with opposition from Republican Susan Collins of Maine, Hawley's opposition to the Medicaid cuts indicates that the proposal would have a very hard time getting through Congress. But while all of this sounds good, some of you may be wondering why Hawley is suddenly such a staunch fighter for the everyday American, for the low-income working American, when in the past he hasn't always been. He has opposed raising the minimum wage in his state, for example, and he supported efforts to undermine public sector trade unions. While much of his concern over Republicans gutting Medicaid has quite a bit to do with the future of the Republican Party and its ability to maintain a loyal electorate, Hawley does make points beyond that, focusing on the hardship the passing of this bill would inflict on millions of Americans, including a significant portion of Missouri residents. From his piece in the New York Times, we Republicans are having an identity crisis of our own, and you can see it in the tug of war over President Trump's one big beautiful bill. The nub of the conflict: will Republicans be a majority party of working people or a permanent minority speaking only for the C-suite? Hawley says that the efforts of what he calls the Republican Party's Wall Street wing to cut Medicaid is not just politically suicidal, but also morally wrong. Here's more. If Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care, and hospitals will close. It's that simple. And that pattern will be replicated in states across the country. Congress should be doing everything possible to aid these working families to make their health care better and more affordable. We should cap prescription drug costs, as I recently proposed. We should give all families in America with children a hefty tax cut. What we should not do is eliminate their health care. He then goes on to say that Trump is against Medicaid cuts, even quoting the president saying that he's not going to hurt Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. But if Josh Hawley doesn't know it yet, the rest of us do know that Trump often says one thing and does another, seemingly just because he can get away with it. He can back his big beautiful bill that cuts Medicaid all the way to signing it into reality, but his supporters will just fall back on this quote that Hawley just quoted and say, yeah, but Trump isn't happy about the cuts. He didn't do this to us. They did this to us. Hawley also says that the part of the Republican Party that's backing the cuts are not part of the Trump coalition. He closes by making a populist argument that the voters support these programs, and if Republicans don't understand or appreciate that, they soon will. Republicans need to open their eyes. Our voters support social insurance programs. More than that, our voters depend on those programs, and there's a reason for this that Republicans would do well to ponder. Our economy is increasingly unfriendly to working people and their families. For the better part of 50 years, working wages have been flat in real terms. Working people cannot afford to marry when they want to, have the number of children they want to, or raise those children as they want to. These days, they can barely afford to put a roof over their kids' heads, to say nothing of healthcare. Speaking of the whys behind all of this, maybe none of it matters. Maybe the why doesn't matter when the end result is what the rest of us want anyway. I get that. But as someone who thinks about this stuff a lot, and as I'm sure most of you also think about this stuff a lot, it does provide a bit of insight into how Republicans are thinking about the future of their party and the future of the country. And I have to admit, I often wonder whether or not Republicans think about the long term at all, considering some of the things that they try to push on their voters. The things they try to convince their voters are good for them, while grocery store prices are obviously not lower than they were, when living conditions are obviously not better than they were before. The big question for them now seems to be, how much short-term pain do they think their voters are willing to endure before those voters just simply stop voting for them? All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.